At first glance, the Ugly Duchess looks like a cruel joke, an old woman in a bizarre dress painted to be laughed at. But the longer you stare, the stranger and darker it becomes. Why is she dressed like a young bride from another era? Why does she hold out a rosebud like a lover? And why does Matsys paint every wrinkle, jewel, fold, and stitch with such intense care, as if this grotesque figure deserves the grandeur of a royal portrait? Beneath the mockery lies a knot of deeper meanings: vanity, lust, aging, gender, social disorder, and the brutal rules of beauty itself. The real shock of the Ugly Duchess is not that the woman looks strange, but it is that the painting exposed the ugly nature of beauty. And even after 500 years, the painting's true meaning keeps shifting like a changing maze. In today's episode, we'll uncover all 13 hidden layers of this painting. But before we begin, I want to thank you for supporting real human art. Every like and subscription helps protect and celebrate something that can never be truly replaced by AI. Art created by human hands, human imagination, and human experience. In an age increasingly saturated with soulless AI-generated content, we remain committed to preserving the depth, detail, and mystery of authentic human creativity. Now, let's begin our analysis. The false title. The first hidden layer of this painting is the false title. The painting is famous as the Ugly Duchess, but in fact, we do not know what title Matsys or his first owner used for it in 1513. Renaissance paintings often did not have fixed public titles in the modern sense, and no original title for this panel survives. Today, in most museum catalogs, it is simply called an old woman. The nickname the Ugly Duchess came much later after the figure was wrongly connected with Margaret of Tyrol, also known as Margaret Maltash. That association came from later copies and labels, not from Matsys himself. Margaret had been a powerful medieval ruler whose reputation was damaged by enemies after her scandalous divorce, remarriage, and political independence. Her nickname, Maltash, was a crude insult, later misunderstood as a reference to a deformed or ugly mouth. But the historical Margaret was not reliably known to be ugly at all. One contemporary source even described her as very beautiful. Over time, the insult became legend, and the legend was attached to Matsys's painting. John Tenniel later borrowed the face for the Duchess in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, pushing the image even deeper into popular culture. So from the very beginning, the painting reaches us through a false label. It is not a portrait of a known duchess. It is an invented or satirical figure that later generations turned into a duchess by mistake. And once that false title falls away, the real mystery opens up. If she is not a duchess, then who is she meant to be? To answer that, we have to carefully examine the painting because every detail seems to hide another secret. The cruel face. The mystery of this painting begins with its most striking element, the ugly face. Matsys paints it with merciless precision, but there is something deeply unsettling about this face. It does not just look ugly, it looks constructed, artificial, and pushed to the extreme, as if Matsys has built an embodiment of old age and ugliness itself. The forehead bulges forward, the nose is thick and blunt, the mouth tightens into a toothless pinch, the chin is heavy, the neck folds and sags, the skin bunches under the eyes and around the cheeks. A raised mole and stray hairs make the body feel even more exposed. None of these details are accidental, they are sharpened and exaggerated to push the figure beyond ordinary age and into something theatrical, almost symbolic. She does not simply look old, she looks like old age turned into a human form. And yet, at the same time, Matsys gives her the visual language of dignity. One hand rests on a stone ledge like the hand of a noble sitter. Her bodice is rich, her brooch catches the light, the white cloth is crisp. The green background is calm and flat, as if the image wants the stillness of a proper portrait. This is where the tension begins to bite. He paints someone meant to look ridiculous, but frames her with the seriousness of rank and ceremony. The picture tells us two things at once: take her seriously and laugh at her. Fashion out of time. That contradiction becomes even sharper in her clothing. The issue is not just that she is richly dressed, it is that she wears styles already outdated by 1513. Matsys combines older court fashions, a tightly laced bodice, a high-plucked hairline, and, most strikingly, a large, horned, heart-shaped headdress from an earlier aristocratic era. That headdress is the key detail. This type of heart-shaped hat belonged to a fashion that had already passed by the time the painting was made. Instead of making her look elegant and noble, it makes her look trapped in an older idea of beauty. By 1513, this style would have seemed excessive, old-fashioned, and even faintly ridiculous. So she does not appear fashionable. She appears as someone clinging to a past version of herself. That detail is more important than it first seems. She is not just old. She is dressed in the remains of youth, as if youth could be recovered by costume alone. The painting turns fashion into a trap. She chooses objects that are supposed to signal elegance, but they betray her instead. Even her hat becomes part of the mockery. It does not make her grand, it makes her look trapped in another time, still dressed as a version of herself the world has already left behind. The dangerous rosebud. Then your eye moves to the rosebud in her hand, and the painting grows darker. It is a tiny detail, but it changes the entire meaning of the painting. In this visual language, a rosebud was not just a loose suggestion of romance. It was a clear symbol of courtship, desire, and even erotic invitation. Here, that symbol feels strangely bold. She does not just stand before us to be seen, she reaches outward. The flower becomes a deliberate gesture of seduction. That is what makes the image so cruel. Matsys is not only showing an old woman dressed up, he is showing an old woman acting as though she is still romantically desirable, still able to play the role of the maiden, lover, or bride. And once you notice that, the painting opens into another layer. Seen beside its companion piece, an old man, this is no longer just a satirical portrait. It becomes a parody of a marriage portrait. In a traditional pair portrait, man and woman would appear balanced, dignified, and socially harmonious. Here the balance is broken on purpose. She offers the rosebud as if making an advance. He raises a hand that can be read as greeting, hesitation, mild rebuke, or quiet rejection. The uncertainty is part of the design. Instead of mutual courtship, we get mismatch. Instead of elegant union, we get awkward pursuit. Even the layout of the pair helps tell that story. She stands on the viewer's left, a more prestigious position often reserved for the man in formal portrait pairings. It made the scene feel slightly wrong before viewers could even understand why. She is too forward, too active, too visible. The whole structure hints that the normal rules have been disturbed. The painting is not simply making fun of her face, it is showing a social order that has gone slightly off its axis. Satire as a weapon. From there, the clearest meaning rises to the surface. At its core, The Ugly Duchess is a satire on vanity and old age. In that sense, it feels startlingly ahead of its time. Long before satire became a dominant force in later Western art, Matsys was already using paint as a weapon, not to flatter but to expose. He mocks the desperate wish to remain young, desirable, and admired long after the body has changed. Her low neckline, her elaborate dress, the rosebud, the poised hand, the old-fashioned finery, all of it points in the same direction. The joke is not just that she is old. The joke is that she behaves as if she is still young and expects the world to play along. But the mockery goes deeper than age alone. The real target is self-delusion. This is why the painting feels so sharp. It is not attacking wrinkles in a general sense. It is attacking the refusal to accept time. The image turns desire into comedy by showing someone who still acts as though seduction belongs to her naturally. That is why the flower matters so much. It is not decorative, it is evidence. It tells us that the woman is not passively dressed up, she is actively performing erotic possibility. Lust and folly. That brings us into the moral layer of the painting. Beneath the portrait format lies a warning about lust, folly, and fantasy. Older viewers would have recognized that kind of message quickly. The woman becomes ridiculous not only because she is vain, but because she seems unable to see herself clearly. Some art enthusiasts see the pair like a moral allegory, with the old woman standing for lust and the old man for greed. Whether or not we take that exact reading literally, it captures something real about the picture. Matsys is turning desire into exposure. The painting says the body has changed, but the appetite remains, and that gap becomes the source of humiliation. This is also why the work feels so close to the world of humanist satire. It shares the same pleasure in exposing vanity by making it visible. Writers of the period loved the figure of the aging lover who still dressed for seduction, still chased romance, still imagined desire could ignore time. Matsys turns that satirical energy into paint. He gives us not a private person, but a type, someone built to embody foolish self-love. The image laughs at her, but it also uses her to laugh at a much broader human weakness, the refusal to see oneself as one really is. The rise of the grotesque. But the painting does not stop there. Once the moral satire is in place, a more art-historical layer begins to show through. The Ugly Duchess is also one of the great early images of the grotesque. In art, the grotesque is a style built around distortion, exaggeration, and the mixing of things that do not normally belong together. It does not simply mean ugly. A grotesque image can be comic, disturbing, playful, monstrous, and strangely fascinating all at once. It often takes the human body and pushes it beyond normal proportion, creating a figure that feels both recognizable and unnatural. That is exactly what happens here. Her face is exaggerated almost to the point of caricature, but it is painted with such seriousness that it becomes more than a joke. Her body does not sit comfortably inside one category. She feels human, theatrical, comic, and unsettling at the same time. Her appearance is designed to disturb proportion, beauty, and expectation. Matsys was doing something bold. He was taking a kind of visual invention often linked to drawings, marginal art, comic imagery, and popular culture, and bringing it into the high seriousness of panel painting. He gives the grotesque a central place, a large scale, and the formal weight of portraiture. That is part of what makes the picture so striking. It is not just a strange face, it is a strange face presented as worthy of major art. The grotesque is no longer hidden in the margins, it is staring straight back at us from the center. Leonardo's shadow. This is where Leonardo enters the story, but not in the simple way people often assume. Leonardo da Vinci and artists around him were known for drawings of exaggerated, distorted, unusual faces, what we now call grotesque heads. Matsys seems to have known that kind of imagery. But the important point is not that he simply copied Leonardo. The deeper point is that these grotesque face types were circulating across Europe, moving between Italy and the north, and artists were adapting them in different ways. Matsys takes that kind of exaggerated face and pushes it much further. He does not leave it as a head study. He turns it into a full figure with a body, expensive clothes, a flirtatious flower, a formal pose, and a social role. He gives the grotesque a setting and a target. What in Leonardo's world might remain a striking study of physiognomy becomes, in Matsys's hands, a social weapon. The face is no longer just strange, it is used to attack vanity, desire, and pretension. The painting's dazzling craftsmanship makes the mockery sharper and harder to escape. The face seems to have been developed with special care, while the clothing and hands feel more freely built around it. Then Matsys paints every inch of the surface with astonishing control. Soft flesh, tiny stitched details in the headdress, delicate textures in the cloth, thick highlights in the brooch. This contrast is crucial. The woman is meant to look absurd, but the painting itself is elegant and beautiful. That tension is one of the painting's sharpest secrets. The carnival mask. And once that is clear, dark arts enthusiasts proposed another possibility. What if this is not a real person at all? What if the painting only pretends to be a portrait? Rather than seeing her as a specific noblewoman, they see her as a fictional or folkloric type drawn from the world of carnival and comic performance. Her exposed chest, exaggerated headdress, bold gesture, and theatrical presence all support that idea. She starts to look less like a known individual and more like a laughingstock figure from festive culture, a character meant to embody excess, indecency, and the reversal of social order for comic relief at court. That carnival reading helps explain something else that has become increasingly important: the painting's gender ambiguity. The figure is dressed as a woman and clearly presents female signs, especially through the breasts and costume. But the face and upper body also carry traits that can feel masculine: the heavy jaw, the broad shoulders, the harder structure of the head. The strongest point here is not necessarily that this is literally a man dressed as a woman. It is that the image is built out of sexual uncertainty. It makes gender feel unstable. Full transgression. This takes us deeper into what makes the painting truly grotesque. Its force comes from collision. Youth and age are forced together. Beauty and decay are forced together. Female display and masculine structure are forced together. Aristocratic portrait dignity is forced onto what may be a carnival type. The image keeps joining things that do not belong together, and that sense of wrong combination is exactly what gives it such unnerving power. The grotesque is not just bodily ugliness, it is category breakdown. Once you see that, the painting starts to read like a study in transgression. It breaks the rules of age, dress, sex, decorum, and portrait convention all at once. That is why it can also be understood as a metaphor for social disorder. The image is not only mocking one strange-looking woman, it stages a whole set of anxieties. The old behaving as young, desire appearing where it should no longer appear, gender becoming uncertain, courtly elegance slipping into indecency, social roles reversing themselves. The painting turns personal vanity into a sign of a world out of order. And that might be the reason why The Ugly Duchess is feeling weirdly disturbing. Portraiture on trial. And then Matsys twists the knife again. Because the image uses the full language of portraiture, it may also be mocking portraiture itself. In the Renaissance, a portrait was not a casual image. To be painted in oil with this level of care and finish was a serious matter. Portraits were usually reserved for people of status, wealth, or importance. They were meant to preserve identity, display rank, and turn a person into something worthy of memory. Here, Matsys borrows that dignified format, the parapet, the pose, the clear background, the polished finish, and gives it to a figure who may be fictional, comic, or grotesque. That makes the whole genre wobble. The painting begins to suggest that the act of having oneself immortalized in a portrait already contains a seed of vanity and self-importance. It is not just the woman who is being mocked. Matsys is also mocking the social theater of status, the kind of person who believes their face and importance deserve to live forever on canvas. The feminist ghost. At this point, the cruelty of the image becomes impossible to ignore. However clever the painting is, its humor depends on a rule that still feels disturbingly familiar. A woman is allowed to be visible only as long as she remains young, beautiful, controlled, and pleasing to look at. Once she ages, once her body changes, once her desire becomes too obvious, society turns her into a joke. In that sense, The Ugly Duchess does more than mock one old woman. It exposes a system that has not disappeared. The same logic still lives in anti-aging culture, beauty filters, celebrity gossip, plastic surgery panic, and the endless public judgment of women's faces and bodies. Women are told to stay attractive forever, but mocked when the effort becomes visible. They are told not to age, then humiliated for trying to hide age. Matsys' painting, intentionally or not, reveals the trap. And this is where the image begins to feel almost prophetic. It was not feminist in its original purpose, but it accidentally opens the door to a feminist reading centuries before feminism had a name. The painting tries to punish this woman for being old, dressed up, desiring, and visible. But in doing so, it also shows exactly what society fears: a woman who refuses to disappear. She does not shrink, she does not hide her body, She does not politely accept invisibility. She dresses loudly, presents herself boldly, and holds out the rosebud as if she still has every right to desire and be desired. That is why the painting shifts under our feet. What begins as ridicule starts to look like resistance. She breaks the rules of beauty. She breaks the rules of aging. She may even break the rules of gender. And because she does it so openly, the joke no longer fully belongs to the painter or the viewer. The painting wants us to see her as grotesque, but a modern audience can see something more dangerous and more powerful. A woman refusing to let society decide when she is finished. In that sense, the real ugliness may not be in her face at all. It may be in the gaze that needed to mock her. Disease or disguise. Another later reading changes the mood in a different direction. Some art enthusiasts have argued that her features suggest Paget's disease, pointing to the enlarged facial bones and other distortions. That interpretation turns the image away from satire and toward medicine. Suddenly, the face is not a moral joke, but a possible record of illness. Instead of asking why she is vain, the viewer begins to ask whether she has been disfigured by disease. That reading became powerful because it seemed to humanize her and replace ridicule with pity. However, other dark arts enthusiasts argue that the figure is probably not a medical case study painted from life, but a fictional type shaped by exaggeration, satire, and carnival logic. The image is too staged, too symbolically loaded, too tied to comic invention to be reduced to diagnosis. So the medical reading remains important mostly as part of the painting's later history. It shows how modern viewers have tried to rescue the figure from mockery by finding a bodily explanation for her appearance. Conclusion. All these layers of meaning have turned the Ugly Duchess into a 500-year-old mystery, an inescapable maze of interpretation where every generation of art enthusiasts discovers a new hidden layer. The false title turned her into a famous duchess. The Victorian use of the image in Alice in Wonderland helped turn her into an icon. Later feminist and cultural readings then transformed her again, seeing in her the fear of aging and the impossible pressure placed on women to remain attractive. In that later sense, she becomes a symbol of the punishing beauty system itself. A figure trapped between the demand to keep trying and the certainty of being mocked for trying. And that is why the Ugly Duchess still grips people so strongly. It never settles into one meaning. First, it looks like a cruel joke about an old woman dressed too young. Then it becomes a parody of courtship and marriage portraiture. Then a moral image about lust and self-delusion. Then a landmark in the history of the grotesque. Then a carnival figure. Then a study in gender instability, then an image of social disorder, then a critique of portraiture, then a misogynistic warning, then unexpectedly a figure of resistance. That is the real hidden structure of the painting. Each layer does not replace the one before it, it deepens it. In the end, the subject of the Ugly Duchess is larger than one grotesque old woman. The painting is really about the system around her. The rules that decide who gets to look beautiful, who gets to remain desirable, who gets to be visible in public, and who gets punished for trying. That is why the painting still feels dark. It does not just show us a grotesque figure, it shows us the brutality of the gaze that made her grotesque in the first place. Thank you for watching. The creativity and craftsmanship behind this painting continue to fascinate me. They also show why, despite its sophistication, AI can never truly replicate works of art filled with this level of meaning, detail, ambiguity, and human depth. Which is why we remain committed to our mission of preserving the value, depth, and originality of art created by real humans and human imagination. Your support helps sustain and promote authentic human creativity in an era increasingly shaped by soulless AI-generated content. We look forward to seeing you in the next video.